challenges emanating from climate changes through adapting their strategies for survival in order to protect themselves against heavy rains and other natural climate features. This is going to increase over the next years, and the Arab world will experience unprecedented climate changes. The traditional mechanisms will never be enough to confront such risks. This session will be discussing the climate change in the Arab world through highlighting a number of experiences from different bodies, from partners in development, from governments, in the arena of putting a limit to emissions or among these challenges are creating job opportunities as well, and to align the needs of today with the needs of the future. I would like to call on Dr. Irfan Ali, who is the Managing Director of the UN Program for Human Settlements. He will talk to us about this context in the Arab world. I would also like to welcome Dr. Ali Hamoud from the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, and he's going to talk to us about transnational climate changes or transnational climate efforts. Next we have Mr. Mohamed Katan, and he is the director of the Committee of Climate Change in Jordan. Welcome, sir. He's going to talk to us about the green infrastructure in Jordan. Also, we have Mr. Marwan Malki, and he is the consultant of climate change. Who works with the United Nations World Health Organization. Also, we have Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi, the associate representative, resident representative for the UN Development Program in Egypt. We also have Mr. Mohammed Zaran, and he's the founder of the Kosovo company, and he's going to talk to us about reforming cities and innovative, sustainable solutions for development. Also, we have Mrs. Zemduraini, and she's going to talk to us about reconstruction and re-urbanization. Also, we have Dr. Maha Fahim, and she's going to talk and she is going to present to us a presentation about the urbanization map in Egypt, the future urbanization map in Egypt. I would like to first welcome Dr. Irfan Ali and invite him to give his speech. Good afternoon. مساء الخير السيدات والسادة. أنا أعمل في منطقة هامة للغاية، وهي منطقة الشرق الأوسط تحديدا المنطقة العربية، وهم طلبوا مني التحدث عن التغير المناخي. عندما يتعلق الأمر بالتحديات التغير المناخي في منطقتنا، أنا لا أعلم من أين أبدأ، لأن المنطقة هي منطقة فريدة من نوعها، لأنها بالفعل تواجه عدد من الصراعات، أنواع مختلفة من التحديات التي سوف تتفاقم بتأثير التغير المناخي. وكل هذا كل تلك التحديات تضع حدا للإنجازات المتعلقة بأهداف التنمية المستدامة. يجب علينا أن نعلم أنه في المنطقة العربية أعتقد أنه بعيد بعض الشيء. الإشارة غير مستجيبة. في منطقتنا حوالي 90% من تعداد السكان في المنطقة العربية يعيشون في 4% فقط من إجمالي المساحة، ونحو 53% يعيشون في المناطق الحضرية وهذا الرقم متوقع أن يزيد إلى 75%. في العديد من الدول معظم السكان، الأصول المادية، المراكز الحيوية متواجدة بالقرب من المناطق الساحلية. كثافة التنمية الاقتصادية والمشروعات في المشروعات السياحية، بالإضافة إلى الممرات المائية الدولية في المنطقة، تزيد من احتماليات تأثر الأراضي العربية والعالم العربي بالتغيرات المناخية. المنطقة العربية هي من أكثر المناطق التي تعاني من ندرة المياه في العالم. يجب علينا أن نعلم أنه 7 دول عربية، لدينا 7 دول عربية مصنفة من أكثر الدول التي بها ندرة للمياه، وهناك حوالي 19 دولة لديها مشاكل فيما يخص ندرة المياه. هذا إضافة إلى التصحر، هذا إضافة إلى تدهور الأراضي.
The region also is among the highest food deficit regions, and the highest food import, because it's the highest importing region globally with regard to food. Currently, the region imports 70% of its food needs. More alarmingly, whenever there are issues with within the countries which are the main food exporters globally, when they have drought seasons, this immediately, or any policies or that will follow these seasons in these countries, would immediately have direct impact on the Arab region. Climate change, in conclusion, climate change serves as a multiplier of threats that exacerbates the existing vulnerability within or with the severe environmentally, economic, social, political repercussions affecting human security in the Arab region. If we talk about the impact on urban areas in the region, recently the published IPCC report on urban areas, it focused on urban areas, on the impact of climate change on urban areas, and it emphasized that much of the key and emerging global climate risks are concentrated in the urban areas. And for sure, climate change will have a profound impacts on a broad spectrum of infrastructure systems, water, sanitation, water supplies, drainage, transport, telecommunication, etc. Also on the services, being health services, being education, or other kind of services. Also on the built environment and the ecosystem services. These interact with other socioeconomic and environmental stressors, exacerbating and compounding risks to individual and well-being, to the individuals and well-being. For sure, the impact vary depending on the climatic zone and economic sectors. Understandably, the sectors most affected are those sectors which are dependent on natural resources and climate, such as agricultural and food production, water, tourism, transport, services, and industries. Impact on cities in our region, in the Arab region, I can for sure refer to droughts which exacerbate desertification, land degradation, and poverty, and for sure migration from the rural to urban areas, and increase the frequency of sand and dust storms. And I think our colleague from Kuwait will reflect on this particular challenge in the region. Also the sea level rise. Many speakers in the earlier sessions highlighted on this challenge. Also this poses very important threat on housing, import cities, on agriculture, on food security, on water quality due to the salt water intrusion, also on industrial facilities, also on tourism and infrastructure, even on natural and cultural heritage in these areas. While at the same time, the extreme weather events are a major threat for sure to the public health. Climate change related diseases are already becoming more likely in the region, which strains the public health sector and puts people's lives at risks. As example, the sand and dust storm, which we've mentioned now, being more frequent and creating or unprecedented number of respiratory diseases in many areas, in particular in the Gulf region, in the Gulf area, in the Arab region. Even in the construction sector, the extreme weather, and we've witnessed that during the last few years, these extreme weather events caused or created losses of employment opportunity because of the frequent suspension of construction projects in the affected areas. With regard to the public transport, although this sector witnessed very important progress in the region, however, this sector is still characterized by the very low or limited penetration of public transport systems, and for sure the inadequate application of environmental standards in this sector. As such, with the increase of or the rising temperatures, the poor transport choices will limit for sure the opportunity and will impact the quality of life of the citizens in the region. With regard to the tourism sector, will inevitably be affected by the scarcity of water resources, the increase of temperatures, the average or the maximum temperatures in the region, as well the sea level rise, as mentioned, the coastal erosion and flooding, and the deterioration of ecological systems, which will have serious impact on the sector, on the tourism season, on the tourist numbers, and for sure on the revenues of the sector. With regard to the vulnerable groups, the rapid urbanization in the region, coupled with the rapid growth of the large cities in the low-income or the middle-income countries in our region, accompanied by the very rapid growth of highly vulnerable urban communities or urban population living in the informal areas or living in displacement areas or being also refugees settled in camps or in poor urban settings. We should know that in our Arab region we have about 81 million inhabitants in the informal settlements, representing almost 10% of the informal settlers globally. Also, we have in the region about 26 million between refugees and IDPs. Majority of them are in urban settings in a very deteriorated or very underdeveloped situations. The IDPs, the refugees, the informal settlers are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, as they usually settle in areas that are at high risk of extreme weather events and that suffer from the lack of public services, of infrastructure, let alone their socioeconomic situation or conditions that leave them at a very little opportunity or very little chance to adapt to the impact of climate conditions or climate change. Moreover, the rural, urban poor, and the remote groups in the region whose livelihood depend on natural resources or climate, those segments have limited also adaptive capacity due to their economic status, thereby making them more vulnerable than other members of the society. The poorest socioeconomic groups are usually the most affected and least able to adapt. And since women are usually more vulnerable to poverty than men, they constitute the largest proportion of these groups. Given the magnitude, intensity, and inevitability of climate change impacts, managing climate change risks is essential to human security and the achievement of the SDGs. Relevant policies and procedures should go beyond reducing the current risks to preventing the community from new risks. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arfan, for shedding light on the cross-cutting issues and really giving a bird's-eye view of the common challenges in the Arab region. And maybe what better way to delve more into details than to talk about and discuss one of the key challenges that do affect the region. One of the transboundary challenges is dust storms in the Arab region. And we have with us now Dr. Ali Al Hamoud from the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research. We have the pleasure of having him with us today to talk about dust storms in the cases of Iraq and Kuwait, and this is one of the cross-boundary challenges that do characterize our region. I welcome you to this panel, and can you...
Thank you.
Excellent, so everything's working. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I usually make presentations in English, but this time I will make it in Arabic with a few items in English. So I will show my presentation. Let's see. I have to start share screen.
We can maybe also have the presentation here. That's an option.
You can see the
other than sharing screens.
You can see my screen, right?
Yes, we do, Dr. Ali.
Perfect. Yes.
Yes. يسعدني
علي الحمود. شكرا لتوضيح حضرتك كمان المجهودات العظيمة اللي بيقوم بها المعهد الكويتي للأبحاث العلمية. ويمكن بيحضرني مقولة إن identifying the problem is half of the solution. تحديد المشكلة أو توصيف المشكلة أحيانا هي نصف الطريق لحلها. فسواء كانت الرصد المبكر أو نماذج المحاكاة أو كل اللي شفناه في العرض النهاردة، هو في غاية الأهمية للتخطيط لدعم صمود المدن. وزي ما شفنا بعض الظواهر الطبيعية بتمر كمان في مدن مكتظة بالسكان زي عاصمة الكويت. شكرا مرة أخرى. وننتقل الآن من الكويت والعراق إلى الأردن. معنا المهندس مهنا القطان، المدير التنفيذي للتراخيص ورئيس التغيير المناخي بالأمانة العامة، رئيس لجنة التغيير المناخي بالأمانة العامة لعمان بالأردن. مهندس مهنا، اتفضل.
السلام عليكم. في البداية يعني نشكر القائمين على هذا المؤتمر صراحة، وتبادل التجارب والخبرات. راح أشرح عن تجربة مدينة عمان في الإجراءات التخفيفية من آثار التغير المناخي. عمان هي العاصمة للمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، بسكنها 42% من سكان المملكة اللي هم حوالي 4 مليون. طبعا المدينة أصدرت استراتيجية لمنعة المدينة سنة 2017، وصدر عنها استراتيجية خطة للتغير المناخي سنة 2019. بكل هاي الوثائق تم التركيز على محور المياه وإدارة مصادر المياه بطريقة كفؤة، وأيضا التركيز على الحصاد المائي، تطوير البنى التحتية الخضراء. كمدينة منعاني زي معظم المدن، عندنا معاناة في موضوع الفيضانات المفاجئة. تكرار هاي الفيضانات على المدينة، وخصوصا في منطقة هي منطقة وسط البلد، وسط المدينة. المدينة تركيبتها الطبوغرافية قائمة على جبال، ووسط البلد عبارة عن مجرى وادي. في أكثر من مرة، أكثر من حادثة خلال السنوات صار عندنا فيضانات وصلت منسوب المياه في تلك الشوارع ل 80 سنتيمتر في الشوارع، ومترين ضمن المحلات التجارية الموجودة على نفس هذا الشارع. كان في خسائر بالأرواح، خسائر في الممتلكات، واضطرت البلدية اللي هي أمانة عمان أنها تدفع تعويضات للتجار. 2 مليون في أحد المرات تم دفع 2 مليون دينار تعويضات للتجار عن خسائر في البضائع. الفكرة أجت من خلال مشروع مشترك مع اليو ان هابيتات. هذا المشروع كان يقوم على دراسة الفيضانات المفاجئة في مدينة عمان، وكان من أهداف هذا المشروع تحسين مناعة المدينة بخصوص الفيضانات المفاجئة، بالإضافة إلى أنه بركز على التقليل من هشاشة اللاجئين والمجتمعات المحلية في مواجهة الفيضانات. متوقع كان من هذا المشروع، وهذا ما تم تنفيذه على أرض الواقع، أنه ينتج عنا هازارد ماب لمدينة عمان. ناخذ مخرجات بتحديد أنواع التداخلات الانترفنشنز اللي لازم نعملها في المدينة، والحلول اللي لازم نتبناها على المدى الطويل والمتوسط والقصير. بالإضافة لأنه تم تقديم نموذج مالي، وهذا بيساعدنا مستقبلا كمدينة إما بتحديد الكلف لتنفيذ هاي المشاريع، وإما بتسويق هاي المشاريع لتنفيذها من قبل الجهات الدولية أو المانحين. نتيجة الدراسة بعد ما تم إجراء مسح هيدروليكي لمدينة عمان، تبين أنه في عندنا 120 موقع ساخن في المدينة بحاجة لتدخلات ومعالجة في مدينة عمان. وتم الاعتماد على السستينبل أربان درينج سيستمز، اللي هو من خلال هذه المنظومة التحليلية تبين أنه في عندنا 80 موقع مؤهلة يصير فيها معالجات بايو ديتنشن اند ريتنشن ارياز، وعندنا 23 موقع في المدينة ممكن نستخدم الفلتر ستريبس، 17 موقع نستخدم الاتنيويشن بوندز. بعد الانتهاء من الدراسة تم اختيار موقع بشكل دقيق، هذا الموقع لتنفيذ أحد الحلول الخضراء اللي هي كانت مقترحة ضمن وثيقة المشروع. الموقع عبارة عن جزيرة مثلثية تعود ملكيتها لأمانة عمان، مساحتها 2100 متر مربع، أجل حل بتبني مجموعة من الحلول البيئية الخضراء في هذا الموقع، اللي هو إنشاء خزان تجميع مياه بطاقة استيعابية 2300 متر مكعب، وإنشاء أسطح مائية اللي هي بتعمل بايو ريتنشن وبايو سويل ارياز. السعة الاستيعابية لها 750 متر مكعب. تنفيذ المشروع هو مشروع مش ورقي، وهو ليس بدراسة مفهوم دراسة، بالعكس الدراسة عززت تطبيق ال 120 موقع. بدأ الشهر الماضي تنفيذ المشروع بدعم الحكومة اليابانية. بالإضافة لذلك اليون هابيتات عملت قيمة مضافة على هذا المشروع، وما تقيدت في الهدف اللي هو كان عبارة عن الحلول للبنية التحتية الخضراء، بل تبنت مبادرات اللي هو الحصاد المائي من أسطح المنازل بتنفيذ مشروعين ليكونوا نموذج في المدينة، وأيضا تبنوا اللي هو توعية للناس وإفهام الناس موضوع اللي هي البنية التحتية الخضراء وموضوع التغير المناخي وأثره على المدينة. بالنسبة لنا كمدينة بدنا نحكي عن، أنا شخصيا رح أحكي عن الإيجابيات لهي المشاريع. أول شيء هاي المشاريع بتعزز قدرتنا على التحكم في المياه، وبتعزز قدرة المدينة على تحسين نوعية المياه، وأيضا بتوجد التنوع الحيوي في المدينة، ترفع من كفاءة البنى التحتية اللي هي أصلا موجودة، هي بوضعها الطبيعي غير كفؤة نظرا لكمية المياه الموجودة في الشوارع، إنما لما بيصير حجز لهاي المياه وإعادة استخدامها في زمان آخر أو مكان آخر بتعزز وترفع من كفاءة البنى التحتية اللي موجودة للمدينة، وأيضا بتقلل علينا من الخسائر المادية والخسائر البشرية وهي الأهم. شكرا لكم.
مهندس مهنا، ويتهيألي كان مثال جميل جدا، لأن كان بعد مداخلة دكتور علي الحمود كان بيتكلم ان اكبر 3 تحديات في الكويت مثلا كانت العواصف الرمليه والجفاف والسيول. فكان مثال جميل جدا ان احنا نشوف ازاي نقدر نتفاعل مع الطبيعه ونبتكر حلول ممكن تستخدم الامطار باشكال مختلفه، تدخلات زي خزانات المياه، جرين انفراستراكشر، والحصاد المائي بالاسطح لمواجهه فترات الجفاف، وايضا مواجهه تحديات السيول. فكان يمكن نموذج جميل جدا بعد العرض السابق. معنا الان دكتور مازن ملكاوي، مستشار التعرضات الصحيه البيئيه في المركز الاقليمي لصحه البيئه التابعه.
He will talk to us about climate change in the Arab world and how policies can be aligned with practices. Good evening. I hope you can hear me and see my presentation. شكرا لكم جميعا. سوف أتحدث لكم من وجهة نظر صحية. وسأبدأ عرضي في 22 دولة عربية في المنطقة. سوف تتفاجؤون عندما تعرفون أننا نخسر 480 ألف شخص كل عام في سن الشباب، وهذا الرقم بالطبع زاد بسبب وباء كوفيد.
But it is killing people, and this is the more strategic part of it. If you try to look at the countries of the Arab world, they are not similar. We start with Somalia with a rate of death of 250,000 people per 100,000 population, going back down to Qatar, where the level is less than 25. There is a big difference between the different Arab countries. If you look at the global average, which is about 150, most of our countries of the region are doing better than the global average. But still, we are losing a lot of people, and we know that there are solutions to avoid such big damage. If we try to understand what are the major environmental risk factors that are killing people, almost 60% of the deaths are happening because of exposure to air pollution. As Dr. Ali said, some of those air pollution sources are coming from natural sources like dust storms, but again, ultimately it is killing people. 60% after the 400, about 300,000 people are dying prematurely because of exposure to air pollution. Also, we have non-optimal temperature, whether excessive heat or excessive cold, also is killing 17% of this. There are other environmental factors that are killing 11% of the 480,000. This is exposure to chemicals, to waste, and different environmental risks. Access to unsafe water and sanitation is responsible for 9% of the deaths, while occupational risk and exposure to different environmental risks in the occupation is also a major contributor to the deaths. As introduced by Dr. Ivan, unfortunately, all these risks are aggravated by climate change. We have strong evidence to know, for instance, that air pollution is increasing because of climate change. Simply, as proven or shown by Dr. Ali, the number and the period of the sandstorms are increasing. And we know that the natural dust is it ranges actually from 20 to 50% of the particulate matter 2.5 or PM10, which is ultimately is what is killing people. And also, the use of fossil fuel will be increasing for air conditioning because of the extreme heat or extreme cold. The non-optimal temperature, again, this is increasing because we have more extreme heat events are observed. We started seeing snow in deserts. And last year, for instance, was a very tragic year for a country like Iraq, where more than 15 cities witnessed more than 50 temperature of, in the daytime. Water and sanitation, we don't have to present any proof on this. We are the water scarce part of the world. And unfortunately, this is widening. The precipitation is decreasing and the temperature is increasing. And from a health point of view, unfortunately, the population started compromising the water quality. They started using bad water quality for drinking as well as for agriculture. We started seeing several countries of the region of the Arab world using untreated wastewater in food production and agriculture, and which is one way or another is being aggravated by climate change. Occupational risks, again, they are increasing by climate change. We noticed that the workplace environments, the environmental risks are not improving. They are, on the contrary, they are deteriorating. Also, exposure to chemicals and waste is increasing in several parts of the Arab world. In order to sort out and find solutions for this, actually, we in WHO, along with the League of Arab States and the United Environment Programme, we developed a regional strategy for the Arab countries in order to overcome those environmental risk factors and trying to lower the burden of the disease. For the first time in the history of the Arab world, we managed to have a joint ministerial conference in Cairo in 2017. During that conference, that meeting, the Arab strategy was endorsed. Hopefully, I don't know, COVID is changing our plan, but we might have the second one this year or earlier next year. From a political commitment, the strategy was endorsed by the Arab leads in the summit in Saudi Arabia in 2018. In the title of the presentation, From Practice Unfortunately, not all the Arab countries started implementing the strategy at the national level. We started seeing some countries drafting their national strategies in view of their local circumstances and started its implementation. On behalf of the League of Arab States, the UNEP and WHO, we are willing, Arab countries who are interested in developing their plans of action. Finally, today is the first day of the COP26, the climate change, and the world leaders of the world are meeting there. And I'll just extract some of our recommendations, to the world, how to avoid, the impacts of climate change on health. And we start by committing to a healthy, green, and just recovery from COVID-19. Most of our economies are going back after the COVID sort of lockdowns. And it is an opportunity to come back greener and better. And possibly one of the positive signs of the lockdown, we noticed the serious decrease in air pollution levels in most of the cities of the Arab world. We don't want lockdowns, to control air pollution, but it is doable. We can do it. We would like all the Arab countries to make the COP26 as the health COP, address the health as a major challenge, to climate change. And unfortunately, several Arab countries already committed, updating their health systems to be resilient to climate change. Also, while addressing the climate interventions, I think we need to prioritize those who are targeting the health of the people. Building the climate resilient health systems, I think the previous speakers spoke about this. We need to protect our healthcare facilities from floods. We need to be prepared for new diseases that are coming, because of climate change. We need to transit our fossil fuel-based energy consumption to renewable energy in order to control the increasing air pollution. And finally, promote the sustainable, healthy urban design and transport system. And I think in several Arab countries, we started seeing some of those fruitful solutions. Amman now is seeing the finalization of its rapid bus, and hopefully we'll see more of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mazen, for your valuable insights. I actually just learned now that for logistical reasons, we have until 6 o'clock. I think it will be fine. We can manage that. We have four interventions lined up now. So I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Mohammed Bayoumi, Assistant Resident Representative for UNDP Egypt. And he'll be talking about a very fascinating project in Egypt related to climate adaptation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to this important conference. It's my pleasure to be with you today. Would you be able to show the presentation, please? Basically, and Dr. Arfan has spoken about the climate change impacts in the Arab region. Egypt is obviously part of this Arab region, and by now Egyptians know the most vulnerable sectors to climate change, starting with the water sector, given the fact that Egypt is a water scarce country. Per capita share of water is below the so-called water poverty level, and obviously any fluctuation in the river Nile flow associated with the change in the rainfall patterns in the upper Nile countries will have a serious impact on the livelihoods of millions of Egyptians living on the water resources for using it for agriculture and irrigation. The second sector, which is highly affected by climate change, is the agriculture sector, taking into consideration that more than 30% of the labor force in Egypt is involved in agriculture. Agriculture contributes to about 11–12% of the GDP, and unfortunately, some of the crops that used to prevail in Egypt and they were doing quite well In the future, they will face problems with yield. There's going to be a drop in this yield. We heard yesterday from Governor of Beni Suef about the impacts this year on the mango and olives in Egypt. And this will prevail to some of the strategic crops might face problems in order to achieve the yield they used to have in the past. The third sector will be affected by climate change in Egypt is the coastal zones, in particular the low-lying lands in the Nile Delta, which will be vulnerable to sea level rise, coastal flooding, and other problems, seawater intrusion, other problems associated with the sea level rise on the most fertile land in Egypt, which generates about 40% of the GDP in Egypt. This is the long-term impacts of climate change in Egypt, but there are imminent threats that we see in Egypt associated with the extreme weather events. The storms are becoming more strong, and the frequency of the strong storms is increasing. Next, please. To the extent that we have seen in Egypt in 2013 a cyclone that hit, this is the city of Gamasa in the Nile Delta coast. It was affected by a real cyclone, and this is something that we have never seen in Egypt beforehand. Next, please. These are pictures from the damage that had happened in this city, the coastal city, which made lots of people started to think actually about what could be the future with extreme weather events. And we have seen, obviously, in the large cities like Alexandria and Cairo, the sceneries of the flooding in the streets and people cannot move and blocked in the streets are becoming quite normal. And this is not only in Egypt, but in many parts of the world where the drainage systems are not designed to accommodate this huge amount of water that comes in a very short period of time with the disturbance that's taking place with the climate change. Next, please. Extreme weather events also are associated with the coastal flooding, sea surges. The sea expands during these extreme weather events. And this is a famous restaurant in Alexandria. And you can see it's flooded with water during the storm. And obviously, this means that the water can advance in the low-lying lands in the Nile Delta during the storms, actually. And this water is being prevented right now with some natural and man-made structures, but in the future, the water can be able to overcome these structures. Next, please. In the north coast of the Delta, there is the International Coastal Road. International Coastal Road that goes across the segment in the Nile Delta is the first man-made barrier, actually, that can stop the water. But unfortunately, this International Coastal Road is not designed to have water standing in front of it, and it can collapse due to that. For years, and many know, in the past, the water was not able to reach the International Coastal Road, and the buffer zone between the road and the sea was able to absorb the coastal flooding during the strong storms. But recently, over the last few years, we started to see the water, the sea, during the storms is able to expand and reach the coastal road. And there is a serious threat that if there is going to be a collapse in this coastal road, this means that thousands of acres south of this road are going to be exposed to seawater that will flow by gravity and flooding human settlements and thousands of acres of agricultural land in these areas. So with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, the Shore Protection Authority, and the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, UNDP, we have been working for the last 10 years trying to find nature-based solutions, low-cost technologies that can stop the water advancing and reaching the International Coastal Road as the first defense line, as I have mentioned. And there were 5 areas, as you can see, in 5 governorates that were identified that have still gaps that the water can flow through during the big storms. Next, please. So we started to learn from the local communities, and these fences the local communities are using to accumulate sand in order to elevate the lands over there. And as I mentioned, it was several years of testing different techniques without getting into the technicalities. Next, please. We were able to reach a kind of a structure, an earth dike. You can see the cross-section of the dike that we put this wooden fences, reed fences over the dike in order to start to trap the sand in the winds. Next, please. This is how it looks like a few months after the establishment of this sand fences. The sand starts to accumulate and starts to take the shape of a natural sand dune with an elevated level that's able to stop the water during the storms. And this, as I mentioned, has been extended along the Nile Delta coast for like 69 kilometers. We are almost finished with like 60–70% of this stretches. Time is very valuable over here because one incident could be really devastating. Next, please. This is how it looks like. As you can see, the tip of the reed fence only appear, and the second line of reed fence is almost being flooded by sand as well. Next, please. This is during the storm, and fortunately the system works and the water is stopped by the dike system. Next, please. This is how it looks like after the storm. The structure is still intact. There is some erosion that had happened in the sand that can be accumulated again with the wind blowing, and a few months' time it starts to take the shape again of the sand dune. This is a kind of a simple technique that we learned, as I mentioned, from the local communities to take care of the imminent threats of climate change, but for the longer term risks associated with the coastal flooding. We are working with the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation again on the development of an oceanographic observation system, because monitoring of the sea and the changes of the sea is going to be very important and crucial in designing the coastal adaptation techniques and upgrading these systems. There is no one solution that can solve the problem, but this is related to time frames, and this system has to be upgraded and updated as we go in time, as long as the sea is changing. The second element that we're working with, also with the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, is related to the development of an integrated coastal zone management plan, which is climate resilient plan, which includes the coastal protection in connection to the expected changes in the sea over the next 50 years, so the development can be resilient to this climate change and sea level rise. Thank you very much.
Very much, Dr. Bayoumi, for this very interesting presentation. And I think my key takeaways from this presentation, or the key ideas that really stand out: nature-based solutions and exchanging know-how with the local community. And I really think this might be considered a trailblazing intervention, at least in Egypt. Another very interesting set of interventions that we can learn about from the private sector is something that we can hear about from Mr. Ahmed Zahran, founder of Karm Solar. Karm Solar has a lot of experience in introducing a lot of green technologies, starting with many activities in Egypt in solar power, desalination, agriculture. And I think it's an excellent example of what the private sector can do to support climate action. Mr. Ahmed Zahran, please.
Good evening. So our company started in 2011, and the main purpose of the company was to bring renewable energy and everything that we believed in into the mainstream. So what is the idea of bringing certain technologies or certain things that you're working on to the mainstream? It means to redesign the infrastructure, redesign what people are used to make sure that renewable energy can be integrated into our daily life with the minimal cost and without disruption to how people are used to get their electricity and how they're used to have their daily life every day. We started by very small things, very small experiments, and let me show you that's one of them. So this is, for example, our campus in the Black Desert in Egypt. That's where we started the company, actually. That building, we reduced the amount of red bricks and cement that were needed to construct it by around 85%, and it is running 100% on solar energy. And this was a thing that we've done for a need. We did not have much budget, and we needed to make sure that we have our office and a place where our engineers can stay so that we can work on implementing solar stations in that area of Egypt. Yeah, and that's another photo of it. We like it very much. We're still using until today. And we're actually, now we're constructing another campus in Minya where we expanded, and it is going to be constructed out of recycled containers. If you know the containers that are used for shipping, we are kind of giving them a second life by taking them, refurbishing them, and then using them as a building material. We actually established a company around that. So instead of just working on rooftops for buildings, we decided to get into designing and sustainable buildings that are producing part or all of their electric needs. And that was one of the things that we were interested in working on. But then we also focused on certain sectors. So one of the sectors that we looked at was agriculture. And we thought, how can we bring renewable energy to the agricultural sector? And we started basically with solar pumping. So we managed in coming up with our own patent for solar pumping back in 2012, where we were converting the diesel pumps that were used to pump underground water from using diesel to using renewable energy, to using solar energy specifically. And this is something that we wanted to make sure that it's mainstream within the agricultural sector. So we had to come up with financing solutions to make sure that this is something that agriculture can adopt without having the financial burden of doing it. And that's why we started investing in solar stations and selling power. So this is something that the regulator, the electricity regulator in Egypt, they encouraged us to do. They said that they want us to basically work on investing in solar stations and selling power, and they will help us in implementing the regulations. Because in Egypt, there was this problem that you had the regulations in place that allow you to invest in renewable energy and sell electricity, but no one was using it because nobody understood how the regulations work and nobody wanted to take the risk. So we decided to be first movers, and we started with the agricultural sector. After the growth we achieved with that, we headed to the tourism sector, where the risk is higher and where there is a lot of seasonality, just like agriculture. So sometimes there is a high season and there is low season with agriculture and with tourism. And we started doing the exact same thing, investing in solar stations and selling power. And then we decided, and that's actually that's the first station in Egypt to get licensed to sell power from a solar station. And that was also in the Black Desert, and it was just 1 megawatt. And the last project we've done was actually much bigger than that. It was 17 megawatts as part of Egypt's net metering scheme. So, must have done something. So I wanted to show you the other station. But anyways, so basically, once we started investing in solar stations and selling electricity, we decided to expand our business model to become a full-fledged utility. Now, the difference between a company that sells electricity from a solar station and a utility company is that a utility is vertically integrated. It does not only do the generation, it does the distribution, the energy management, and the energy trading. And the reason we wanted to integrate the entire value chain is because we realized that part of the reason why renewable energy is not able to be the mainstream source of energy is that the infrastructure around it is not designed with renewable energy in mind. It is designed with the use of fossil fuels as the mainstream source of power. Now, what we wanted to do is redesign the entire business model and redesign the entire infrastructure to make sure that renewable energy is the mainstream source. And utilities are things that require a lot of investment and they take a lot of time to build. So they are among the most difficult to disrupt and change. So the power utility, for example, if you look at it, you'll see that it did not change much over the past 70 to 80 years. It's basically the same and its economics are the same. The cost of generation is very high, so you have to centralize it. The cost of distribution is a bit cheaper, so you're able to centralize generation and then distribute. But today, that is changing. So the cost of generation is not as high when it comes to renewable energy. So you can have distributed generations in many different places, and that will reduce the amount of investment you also put in distribution. So as those things are changing, when we invest in the infrastructure, we have to take that into account, and this is what we're doing today. We're redesigning how the business model is working, and that entails a change in the technical design when it comes to power distribution. So right now we managed in starting, and again the regulator helped us big time in doing that, and we started distributing power in certain parts of West Cairo, and we're expanding that business and we're linking it with the generation business. So when you are sitting at home, you know, we're used to our power utilities being the old type of utilities. But what's going to happen in the future is that your electricity will be coming directly from solar stations that are owned by the same company that is providing that electricity to your doorstep. So right now, our clients are changing from being just one client to whom we're selling electricity to becoming an entire regions that are consistent of residential, commercial, retail, and other type of consumers. They're all connected to the same grid, and where we are satisfying them from our own generation from renewable energy, and then we complete the rest from electricity we buy from other sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Zahran, for this very inspiring intervention about examples in Egypt and what the private sector can do. We have with us now Ms. Yasmin Ediredi from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. She'll be discussing, shedding light on the role of MDBs in guiding and in supporting private sector interventions to address climate change mitigation and adaptation challenges. Yasmin, تفضلي.
Thank you very much. Can you just confirm you can hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Durhami, for inviting me to represent the EBRD in this very important event. And also thank you for this very pertinent question. And I think right now all my bosses are providing an answer to this particular question at the UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. So I hope that we are consistent in what we say. So the very quick answer to the question is the role of MDBs in supporting the private sector with addressing climate change is absolutely key. The mandate of development banks is development, and it is also sustainability. And we cannot, this type of development cannot be done without mobilizing private sector finance, and without mobilizing it in a proper, responsible, and environmentally sustainable way. So the MDBs can, and they do, play a very vital role in pushing policies and programs in the countries that they operate in. And a decade ago, the focus has entirely been on climate change. And then policymakers, bankers, engineers, all sorts of people have come together to see what is it that we can do. And what's really palpable is that there was a shift, a paradigm shift between the typical risk-based approach of this is a dirty sector, let's stay away from it, to how can we actually proactively and positively be advancing things. And so the EBRD, the bank, the MDB that I work for, has launched a number of initiatives in the last decade. I think the first one to mention is that in the run-up to the Paris Climate Conference, the EBRD set out what we call GET, the Green Economy Transition Approach. The objective was to support a transition to building green, low carbon, and resilient economies. And there was a target that a minimum of 40% of EBRD's financing needed to be aligned with the GET approach. So obviously, you can all guess that this meant that the bankers had to educate themselves of what exactly it meant to be involved in a green financing. And also, this created a surge of green investments in our countries of operation. And in parallel, there was a gradual behavioral change, both within our institutions, within the financing community, as well as our clients and the countries we operate in. But to reach this target, but to reach this volume of transactions at the speed we wanted, the regulatory and the legislative framework of the countries we operated in need to be updated. They needed to be updated to facilitate the expansion of cleaner energy and technologies. So the typical examples, which I'm sure you all heard of, is the project that we are very proud of, the feed-in tariff reforms that for solar and wind power. This started in Jordan, and then I think the peak was in Aswan, in Bimban, where exactly this type of legislative reform was able to attract all sorts of investments from across the world, and also in job creation. Now, the other thing is, this is when we talk about direct finance, but also indirect financing, which is when we're financing projects through financial intermediaries. This is the biggest volume of our transactions. So we created programs such as green economy financing facilities to ensure that we have a wider reach of impact. But with this delegation of the type of assessment that is done to the financial intermediaries, there's also a need to build capacity. So we introduced databases for green technology providers, and we supported all of our partner banks with advisors and consultants to ensure consistency and continuation of our green agenda. So this created both directly and indirectly a driver for growth in terms of job creation and introduction of cleaner technologies. We also launched the Green Cities program, which is where we have today, I think, around 45 or more municipalities signed up to it, and more than 2 billion euros dedicated to supporting these cities in identifying, prioritizing, and connecting the city's environmental challenges with infrastructure priorities as well as policy measures. So in the Arab region, we've got Cairo, Alexandria, 6th of October, and Amman cities that are already part of this program. And a number of cities are already in advanced talks about joining. But now, the most trending topic, and I've heard all of the earlier panels today focus on the Paris Agreement. And so, as of the 1st of June, we actually, as EBRD, we took the decision that any project receiving funding from us must be consistent with both the climate mitigation and adaptation goals of the Paris Agreement. Basically, if a project is not Paris aligned, they're not getting our money. Part of the assessment is also identifying whether the project is in line with a low carbon pathway. And if they don't have, the signatories of the Paris Agreement have the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs. So if a low carbon pathway doesn't exist, EBRD is actually keen to develop it. In our due diligence work, in the environmental and social impact assessment that we do, we have to include climate change considerations, and we make sure that medium and long-term plans, management and mitigation plans are included to address those. So we make sure that our clients, whether in the public or the private sector, understand those, have the right resources, and they have the capacity to implement them. And we monitor closely the implementation, and we update the actions is necessary. And as we receive also from the scientific community more information. So additionally, we also now determine the physical climate risk of projects. This includes everything that we heard today, heat stress, flood risk, landslides, soil erosion, etc. But not only of where money is going, where the project is, but also the physical location of the sponsor of the project. And finally, we invest a lot in technical assistance to build capacities and introducing metrics to environmental, social, and governance criteria with our counterparts to bridge the gap of acquiring and processing the necessary data, climate data. And eventually, we hope that this will pave the way for countries to attract the right resources and the right knowledge to take part in this global transition, and eventually for each country to act as a conduit for information between investors, policymakers, and the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, for this quite comprehensive overview of a very good example of the role of MDBs and the various examples EBRD is setting, stressing on the Paris alignment of all investments and projects, the various initiatives and approaches, the CAT approach, the Green Cities program that we are very well aware of, and the various interventions that are really helping many countries advance their own legal and regulatory framework, and also introducing a lot of concepts, and maybe not even just in environment, but other aspects as well, such as gender mainstreaming, such as other types of impact assessments, and so on, and the various metrics that countries are being exposed to over time. So this is definitely very, very valuable for the advancement of cities. So thank you once more, Yasmin Diredi. It was a very valuable intervention from your side. أحب أقدم دلوقتي
I would like now to introduce Dr. Maha Fahim. Dr. Maha Fahim, she's the Vice President of the General Authority for Urban Regional National Urban Planning, and she's going to talk about the future map for the urban development in Egypt. I think that this is a good opportunity to close the session today, to see the different issues that we saw today. What are the development plan in Egypt? Dr. Maha, please, the floor is yours. In the name of God Almighty. They told me that we have to finish at 6, so I will try to not to be lengthy. Actually, it's my pleasure to be here with you today, but the most important thing that I liked the most, that this is an opportunity to present the experience of the Arab Republic of Egypt, because we work in a governmental entity. It is the only governmental entity that we do a kind of urban planning on all levels. From the urban terminology for us is not only housing. Urban for us, it means a land that the citizens are going to do some activities. So for this, our work is not a sectorial work. It is a kind of integrated work and inclusive work in order to reach the final product. What is the difference between us and between any other work? Each ministry is focusing on a specific unit or a specific department. When we work on a piece of land, we tackle all the activities and all the housing and the constructions that are going to build on this area. Actually, I have a very long presentation, but I promised Ahmed to run. Please allow me to tell you that we have 25 years that I want to summary them up in only 10 minutes. This 25 years, we have lots of maps. Each map is going to present a form of the development forms in Egypt. Let's start with what you see in the red color. These are the stops that I would like to stop at. First of all, in the year 1997, we weren't that much. The population was about 60 million, and we used only 5% of the whole area of Egypt. So we suppose that among our role is to see why we all live on about 5% of the whole area. We didn't have a specific strategy on this, so we started working on a specific strategy in order to see what are the other areas that we can scale up, and we go out from this 5%. So we had to tackle it from the national level and from the national perspective. Now it's been 2 days that we are here in the World Cities Day, but I'm very happy that we are focusing on the national level and not only the international and the regional level. When we have solutions, we have the solutions from the top of the pyramid to the base of the pyramid. So if we don't see the nearest dimension, we won't be able to see the farthest one. In the year 1998, as we saw to study the areas of the Arab Republic of Egypt, we start to see where are the areas that they have resources and where are the areas that are suffering from risks. It's not us that we conducted these studies, but they were other ministries in Egypt, like the Supreme Institute for Scientific Research, and enable us to gather all this information together. In the year 1997, we didn't have the applicable programs, we didn't have any systems, any technological systems, so each entity brought their database, their information, and we tried as much as we could to gather all this information all together in order to expect how the map will look like. So if we are going to scale up, how the scale up will be. You can see this yellow squares. These are the new urban communities, 44 communities that we see from the year 1998 that they are implemented now, and we have in addition to this, in order to reach 63, the whole idea is that what we saw from the year 1998 were just researches on the paper, theoretical researches and studies in order to study the requests and the needs in order this map to be mandated. We had to have a presidential decree in order to be applicable and in order to execute this map. So all the ministries, they gather together because each entity or each ministry, they own a specific area, and there are some ministries like the Ministry of Archaeology and the Ministry of Petrol that they have some incentives. And what we had at that time was a presidential decree considering all this land. If they worked on these areas, they will be able to reach and to achieve the invest goals and the economic goals in the year 2001. We said, okay, the year 2017 is very far, so we are still in 2001. But the idea was that the ministries, they worked on the lands without calculating the developing revenue, and this make the people still living on the 5% of the land. Then we have another milestone by the CAPMAS in the year 2007. They were conducting a study that we are going to reach, the population is going to reach 75 million by the year 2017. The investment map was drawn to the year 2017, but they did not put in consideration if they are going to absorb the 75 million. Actually, the population dimension was not put into consideration properly. But the whole idea is we had to have another vision on the national level, and we do a kind of legislation amendment, and the amendment that happened at that time was drafting a law which is the amended urban development law to conduct a national study. As you can see, this is the most important level that can scale up to the regional level. So from the national level we can see what and at the same time, we were able to conduct a group of studies and to establish a vision, and was the first time to conduct a vision in the country, and we reflected this vision. And let's stop here, that this happened in the year 2010. This vision reflected on the areas. You can see it as zones. and we were looking how to distribute the roles. We can say that this map was the milestone for the national planning strategy that the Prime Minister always present this tackling and studying the human resource and the natural resources, because we couldn't achieve any of the goals without going deeper into the studies for the resources, the natural resources and the capital resources, and to assure sustainability. And we start doing a kind of networks, transportation networks, in order to reach the urban community. Let's say that this map is a milestone, and from this we implemented the map of 2011. After this, we were able to know how we are going to work and what are the areas that we are going to work in the field of development. We have 10 areas on the top priorities. These 10 areas we start working on it. What's new in the Egyptian experience, that it is not only on paper, it is not a theoretical experience. No, it is an implemented one. It has been executed. So this occurred a kind of a dramatical change on the plan. Each line, we have inhabitants, we have projects, we have investments. We continued on our work, and we can see the new cities that you can see in the squares in the year 2001. Maybe the new administrative city was added. And then after this, after 2013, in the era that we were able to focus on the mega national project under the supervision of the President of Egypt, all the outcomes of the projects and the most prioritized areas. And we are actually very happy that these projects were executed and implemented. You can see the project of the $1.5 million fedans and the projects of the renewable energy, then the project of 2016, 2017, whatever was drawn, whatever was on paper, started to be executed. The new administrative city, El Mansoura, El Jadida, El New Alamein, and in Upper Egypt, like the west bank of the Nile, and October extension, and more studies were conducted, and we were very keen. We focused also on the environmental dimension. We found that implementing the projects will consume more and more resources, but we have to stop and to conduct more studies to ensure sustainability and to put in our consideration the environmental dimension. We reached at that time that all of a sudden we found that it is the year 2017. The presidential decree that was issued in the year 2001 to target the year 2017, we found that we still have a long time to go, but actually we found that 2017 came very quickly. I would like you to see the difference between the map on the right hand side in the year 2001 to that are the goals that were supposed to be achieved in the year 2017. The map on the left hand side is the product from 2010 till 2017. So we can say that when we worked separately and when we conducted separately studies, we had static maps, and the idea of the inclusive and integrated product. We have a dynamic map, and the map is becoming clearer and clearer. After the year 2017, we had another plan, new map for the future, and we started to see we have the land, we have the resource, but what is the best use in order to achieve the developing dimension and the Egyptian Vision 23 and the articles of the constitutions. And in order to draw this map, we had to make sure that we are going to protect and preserve the resources and to do a kind of balance between the requests and the needs and the objective and the goals of the national program, and putting in consideration the socio-economic dimension. And with the cooperation with all the ministries, a new map that we named the map of developing the land of the state. You can see the land that they have the priority that we actually implementing this project. So we have another presidential decree in the year 2018 in order to start execution. Actually, the rate of execution are actually very rapid. We start going on and on and on. So we need to conduct a specific study for the environmental dimension. That in the year 2018 we designed a map that should put in consideration the environmental dimension. And from here, the map that took us and moved us. There will be a future map in the year 2019 working on the land sustainability analysis. The idea is what I'm going to do and how I benefit the most from the resources, paralleling with the environmental issues. So we actually adopted a new methodology to work on 3 levels with the environmental sensors, the resource level, and we took them up in 210 and 211, and we started doing analysis to see what were implemented and applicable, and what are the projects that were not implemented. We did a kind of assessment for the lands in 2 ways. We actually involved and engaged the main major resource like the transportation, the road networks, to see where are the best resource that we can establish agriculture and economic projects. Depending on this analysis, I'm going to stop here. We actually drew another map in 2020. We found, according to this analysis, putting in consideration the environmental dimension, there are 5 other areas that you can see with the red circles. These are new. There are new areas that can be added to the map, and I can see later on, fortunately, that we studied also the oasis according to this analysis, and as a result, if you remember the map on the right hand side, we can see the geographical situation of Egypt, and the resources were very close to the ports, and they were like gateways. But now eastern gateways and western gateways and southern gateways, we start studying all these gateways all together, as this is a new role for the state. Together with the these gateways is considered to be a kind of integration for the environmental dimension and urban requests and needs. They all represent the component either in the east, west, or the south. We found that the project of the new delta, and this is one of our new projects. We were the first entity in August 2021 that this is a promising area, and then we found that this area proved that it is the best area to invest, and this proves that whenever we conduct more deeper studies, this will be better for all of us. As a result, after this, we did a kind of review for ourselves. If we start calculating, we started in the year 1997. We only, the whole area of Egypt, the people were using only 5%. Now we reached 13.7. This means that as much studies, as much deeper studies, we can reach sustainability and we can develop. Let me stop here at this chart that you can see in the period of time throughout 25 years from 1997 till 2021 that we started with 5.5% from the whole area of Egypt. That this reached to 7.8 in the year 2010, and then we reached 11, and now we reached in the year 2021 to 13.7, and this will took us, in order not to be lengthy, to the last chart for the new urban development plan from now 2020 till 2030. The next one, please. The last map, which is you can see lots of lines. Simply, it's identify the best places for development, the gateways, the southern gateways with Africa, with the western gateways with Libya, the eastern gateways with Asia and the Gulf countries. This map shows the importance and the roles and the priorities, the developing priorities in order to scale up and to benefit from all the areas of Egypt. Thank you very much, and sorry for being lengthy.
شكرا جزيلا دكتورة مها. يعني الحقيقة كان عرض شيق جدا لمجهودات الهيئة، ومن ضمن الحاجات اللي لاحظتها حضرتك بتقولي ان وصلنا لدرجة ان حيز التنفيذ بيسبق حيز التخطيط كمان، ويمكن من مزايا الفرص ان احنا يبقى في حوار ما بين الجهات المختلفة ان احنا نقدر نتعامل مع التسارع في التدخلات اللي احنا محتاجين نعملها النهارده، وفي توافق كتير بين الجهات المختلفه الان. يمكن ده شفناه النهارده ما بين الجهات الحكوميه، الجهات الخاصه، الجهات البحثيه، جهات التعاون الدولي وشركاء التنميه. اللغات ابتدت بالفعل تتقارب كتير من بعض، وكلمنا النهارده على نماذج الماتريكس المختلفه اللي موجوده، المبادرات اللي بيشترك فيها جهات مختلفه. أحب أشكر حضراتكم مرة تانية للمداخلات القيمة جدا، دكتور عرفان علي، دكتور علي الحمود، مهندس مهنا القطان، دكتور مازن الملكاوي معنا على زوم، دكتور محمد بيومي، أستاذ أحمد زهران، مهندسة ياسمين الدغيدي، ودكتورة مها فهيم. تشرفنا جدا بحضور حضراتكم معانا النهارده. شكرا. أنا لا لأسباب لوجستية طلبوا مني إن في طيارات عشان المترجمين، بس أنا بقترح فعلا لو ندي كده دقيقتين، لو في أي تعقيب حد حابب يضيفه ختاما للقاء النهارده من السادة المتحدثين.
عشان أنا because I only talked about the challenges in the beginning, so I just wanted to say that I see great opportunities to reverse the impact of or the challenges and the impact of climate change in our region. We've heard many projects and interventions from local authorities, from the private sector, from the development banks. I think we need to mobilize all our efforts to work together to reverse the challenges. I see an opportunity. I see great opportunity. I see great awareness with regard to this challenge in the region. There are great initiatives at the regional level. Next year we will host the COP27 in Egypt. Last week we were in Saudi Arabia, where we participated in the launching of the Saudi Grain Initiative, also at the regional level for the MENA region. So all these efforts, I'm confident that would help our region to change all these challenges and to benefit from the opportunity. Thank you so much. It means that we should stop.
Thank you so much once more, esteemed panelists, and thank you very much for staying with us. And we look forward to meeting once more in similar fora and conferences. Thank you so much. Thank you.